Welcome to Cars on Call. I am automotive journalist Steve Schutz, and I'm here. We don't have Adams Hudson because he is away, and we don't have Stefan Moran, Dr. Stefan Moran, our trauma surgeon. By the way, we are the only car podcast that has a trauma surgeon to talk about car safety. Isn't that great? So those two guys are away, but a frequent, regular, awesome guest is my business partner, Jeff Bank. And Jeff's here. Thank you, Jeff, for fitting us in.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. Happy to be here.
Jeff is not only a car nut, but his knowledge is unbelievable. So I love your knowledge, Jeff. It's it's better than mine.
No, I
Um,
always learn something from you. So
we've got an interesting rundown, and I really wanted to get into our new car sales today. So it's the end of Q3 2025. I want to get into car sales. It's always interesting this year, and especially this quarter. It's especially interesting. And Jeff, I want to get your feedback because you are a BEV enthusiast,
yes,
and
I am.
there's a lot of BEV news. And then we're going to talk about car safety, but not from the trauma surgeon standpoint, but from the Jeff Bank and the Bank family standpoint.
Yeah, this it's one thing to hear Stefan talk about it, but it's another thing to really live it. So I'm happy to looking forward to sharing my thoughts. But
Absolutely. And then there's a car spotting, which is I'm gonna tease it by saying it's underwhelming. And then we're gonna move on to PCA, Porsche Club of America. They had a really nice program here in Boise, Idaho. And Jeff was there, and some of the cars are great. So that was really cool. So, Jeff, let's get started. I'm going to go through some of the
sounds good.
Q3 sales. Obviously, I want to get your feedback, but I find car sales to be really interesting. It is a reflection of the overall economy, and it's a reflection of the health of the economy and kind of the consumer sentiment. And I find it really, really interesting. So, Q3 was good. 2025 is good. Just for comparison, a really great year of car sales in America, and that's light vehicles, obviously, it includes light trucks, is about 17 million cars. And we're on track this year in 2025 to be about 16 and a half. That is an excellent,
Wow.
that's an excellent year. For comparison, on a higher side, China, it's about 25,000 a year. It's 25 million a year. So they're
Mhm.
bigger than we are. And then another comparison is we dipped the low that I can think of. We dipped below 10 million car sales in 2009 during the Great Recession because there was really no credit. You couldn't get a car loan. So that tells you, I mean, it tells you how bad it was in 2009. Jeff, you remember that.
Yeah, yeah, that was and I think looking back on our the Porsches of that era and the other enthusiast cars, they're in such there were just no cars produced, and now that era is very desirable for the analog feel as well as in the lack of all the technology that we some of us like less than others.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, for the Porsche enthusiasts, that would be 997.2. And those are really good cars. And again, really desirable because, as you point out, Jeff, they made fewer of them.
Yeah, yeah. Supply and demand, simple business is Adams as well. So,
Yeah, so it's been a good year. I can summarize the kind of everyday car market with one sentence. Toyota is killing it. It's unbelievable. I
hybrids
mean,
galore. Yeah.
in general, Toyota is kind of nipping at the heels of Ford, and it's been like that for, many years, at least 10 years. And in Q3, Toyota sold 540,000 cars and light trucks and 1.6 million for the year to date. Ford only 519,000 for Q3 and 1.6 million for year to date. So 1.6 and 1.6. So I'm looking at that. I'm
I
like that's not they obviously can't be a tie. So I went down, I zoomed in, and it was 1,571,800 for Toyota and 1,595,000 for Ford. So Ford is still a little bit ahead, but given the incredible surge for Toyota in Q3, they're going to beat Ford by the end of the year. And before I do want to get your thoughts on that. There is a major story, and this is how current events can affect everything. The plant that makes the aluminum, one of the plants, I think there's three plants, three suppliers that make aluminum for the F-150, caught on fire and is out for who knows how long. So they're going to have a really hard time making F-150s. F-150, of course, by far their
Yeah,
best seller.
sure, sure. No, that's I was just thinking, it's like, man, if Ford didn't have the F-150, or because the Tundra and the F-150 are really, nowhere near sales comparison, that's huge for Toyota and all their hybrids, and that huge bet that they made on hybrids is just paying off dividends, while Ford is refocusing off EVs, and Toyota's really never been on them. So this is I think kind of where you're seeing those, I guess, lines cross in the in sales. So that's way to go, Toyota, killing it.
Yeah. I'm going to give you an observation, and I want you can tell me what you think. I have been seeing number one, a ton of new Forerunners. Number two, a ton of new Land Cruisers. Just looking
Mhm.
around.
Yes, yes, and actually, and some in like really nice colors too. I think it's not your standard kind of silver, beige, white, black. Like there's actually real colors that they're making and people are buying, which is refreshing. And I like the looks of the new Forerunner, and I'm sure their sales are backing it up. So yeah, I wait again, way to go, Toyota.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And you know, it's one thing to come out with good vehicles, and a lot of manufacturers do. But the second thing you have to have is like a rock band. You want to have good music, but you got to have an audience that appreciates it. So it's what you make and the ear of your audience. Well, the ear of Toyota's, Toyota trucks. I mean, Tacoma, Forerunner, Land Cruiser, especially, is just incredible. Obviously, their bestseller is the RAV4, so it's the crossovers too. But there's something about what they're doing that they are connecting with the buyer.
Yeah, I think it's that youthful kind of tough off-road image, and coupled with their just reliability, and they just know how to do mass manufacturing and high levels of quality on a large scale.
Yeah, well, Toyota's killing it. To repeat myself, in the luxury battle, it's always basically the big three is BMW, Lexus, and Mercedes. And when I was young, and I'm talking about 70s, 80s into the 90s, it was always Cadillac number one, Lincoln number two, and everything else was way behind. I remember in the 80s, my uncle worked for BMW North America, and he said a really great year for them would be 100,000 vehicles in a year. And he said, we usually go around 80, sometimes 90. Obviously, in the 90s, they really blew up, and in the 2000s, they continued their growth. Well, in Q3 alone, BMW sold 97,000 vehicles, what they would usually expect in a really, really good year.
That's amazing. Wow, good for them.
Yeah, so through Q2, Lexus was ahead, and then BMW had a really huge surge, and BMW sales. And again, think about the volumes. This is so many tens of thousands of vehicles. They had a 24% increase in sales in Q3 alone. And Lexus had an amazing quarter, Jeff. They went up
Wow.
19%, and BMW's like, hold my beer,
Yeah, throw
24%.
the throw the gauntlet down. Wow, wow. Yeah, because I mean, all their SUVs are just, we recently had an X5 rental car while the X7 was getting a recall done, and it's like, hey, this is the same thing, and it's still high quality, nice interior, and I see why people are buying them. I guess they have the partial hybrid in the X5, but yeah, way to go, BMW.
And to your point earlier, Jeff, way behind is Mercedes. They're really struggling. They went
Mhm.
all in on BEV, and the same with
Yeah.
Audi. And Audi's really struggling. Audi barely edged out Cadillac for Q3, and that should never happen. It should be way ahead of
Mhm.
Cadillac. So, because I think the lesson is if you go all in for BEV, which Mercedes and Audi did, then you're really in trouble. But if you hedged your bet, which BMW certainly did and Lexus did, that's the right move.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, really for everybody that comes, same thing with Ford and Toyota. I think that's the theme here.
I want to make a couple of points about Cadillac, Jeff. Cadillac, as you know, is going to be a sponsor and a team owner in Formula One next year.
Yeah,
And when that was announced a couple of years ago, I thought that was really stupid. I no longer think that. And here's one interesting point. For Audi, it's mostly the Q5 and everything else kind of struggles. The Q7 does okay, but it's kind of a one horse. I don't know
one
what
trick
the.
pony, or yeah.
That's what I meant.
There we go.
So thank you, but it's not that way for Cadillac. Cadillac, it was really spread across. Obviously, the number one seller is their Escalade, of course,
Mhm.
but the Lyric sold about two-thirds of what the Escalade did. The That was a really good seller, but even like the XT5 and the XT4, they sold quite well. I'm a little nervous saying that because probably a lot of those went to rental fleets,
Sure,
but
sure.
the Lyric and the other BEVs that are coming are very attractive products.
And you have the Escalade IQ that's now becoming available, and it's, I mean, an even heavier, even more imposing Escalade. And but yeah, I think, the value proposition with for Cadillac is always the Escalade, but they still have that Blackwing range, which you think with this F1 sponsorship should only expand, or only, be a boon for their sales. But we'll be curious to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Formula One is high tech, BEVs are high tech. I think what's going to happen, Jeff, I think what Cadillac's going to do, and again, they have some real momentum because they have really good products. They are going to hybridize. They're going to get some kind of, I mean, the first vehicle that had a generator, as the engine was a generator that did not propel the wheels, was the Chevy Volt. Well, they can Chevy Voltify all those BEV Cadillacs. I mean, imagine you get the Escalade IQ, take some of the battery weight out of there and stick a generator in, four-cylinder engine, you can have that's
Sure.
an even better product. I bet you can have a range of like 800 miles.
Yeah, yeah, and then and again, appeal to those people who live in more rural areas, in Idaho, Wyoming, like, where we're at. But
Yeah, where it's a non-starter to have a complete BEV. Cold
yeah,
winters, not a lot of chargers, a lot of open areas. It doesn't work.
yeah,
You put an engine into generator, all of a sudden you got something that's not a total non-starter.
sure.
All right,
Yeah, you get
speaking of
yeah,
BEVs, Jeff, this is interesting. A record 410,000 BEVs, all electric BEVs, were sold in Q3. That is a big record. Obviously, it's because the $7,500 per vehicle tax credit from the
is
US
now
government
over. Yeah,
was
yeah,
over on September 30th. So everyone jumped in to get their deal. And I expect Q4 is going to be for BEVs a terrible year. Just to give you a couple numbers before you jump in about BEVs, Lucid, I know you're a Lucid fan. Lucid had a good quarter. The Gravity is just coming out. I have not seen one yet. I know they're just being sold. It's their SUV.
yeah,
Beautiful vehicle. You can talk about that later. But 2,300 vehicles. That's up 35%. Small numbers, but still, it's an increase. Interestingly, this, um, despite this tax credit going away, Rivian didn't surge. And I think it's because their cars are too expensive. I think it's an $80,000 cap, and the Rivian they're all out the door at 90,000, 100,000, 110,000.
sure,
So they sold 11,000 Rivians. That was down 8%. Tesla was down 9%, but they sold 150,000 vehicles. They're the big kahuna. They always sell more than all other BEVs combined, and they're doing pretty well, but they're definitely down compared with prior, probably for political reasons. So, Jeff, talk about Lucid and talk about what you think about the BEV market.
yeah. I think Lucid is finally coming around to producing the Gravity, and that they're supposed to be ramping up production even further in the fourth quarter of this year. So they go from the 2,300 that you had mentioned up to close to the, like, triple, almost quadruple that is the goal before the end of the year, as they kind of solve some of these rare earth metals that they're sourcing, and getting some of their, to quote Elon Musk, manufacturing hell
Yeah.
in better sorts. But I'm surprised that Rivian was actually down. That can't be that's a harbinger that, hey, as you said, that the vehicles are too expensive, and that tax credit, I think, phases out at a certain income level or tax bracket, and so you have to, have to have a certain income to be able to afford those vehicles. So I think maybe that makes intuitive sense looking at it. But I just think that the fourth quarter of this year, uh, the anchor is going to sink as far as
I think it's going
BEV
to be.
sales go. Yeah,
I think it's going to be what Elon Musk did not say. I think it's going to be sales hell.
yeah, yeah,
Hey, talk
yeah.
about
That
the gravity because you've actually considered. You're actually considering getting that. You like it. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think looking at the gravity, like the this it's a well packaged, efficient 3-row luxury SUV that happens to be a battery electric vehicle. And I think for us, it would fit into our lifestyle with our girls needing they're growing up, they need more space for all the activities that they're in. We're driving around in our Macan the other day, and they're like, I don't have enough space, and we couldn't fit
And by
a
the way, these are
cooler.
not teenagers.
No, these are tiny, they're 6 and 8. And they like their space. They're used to riding around in an X7 and stretching their legs, although tiny. And but yeah, we were, looking at going, just kind of activities for the day and loading up the Macan. It's like, oh no, actually this isn't going to work, or we have to rearrange things or make multiple trips. And so that's just space wise, that's part of the reason we're looking at the gravity. And then in addition, we put solar panels on our house, and we would be able to produce some of our own energy to be able to charge an EV. So I think that just cost wise, I think it makes intuitive sense in that regard. And then I think the big one is, hey, we don't have a Lucid dealer in Boise, and there's a mobile service and through Salt Lake, but they actually come. There's mobile service that actually comes to pick up your car and to come service your car. Although granted, that's going to be few and far between because EVs don't need kind of regular oil changes like a internal combustion engine car. But those are some of the reasons we're really looking at the gravity.
Cool.
Not to mention,
Yeah,
speed and all the luxury appointments and the tech to go
and,
along with it.
and it's good looking. And
I think so. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
presumably, Jeff, and you'll talk more about this in a second. You thought about safety.
Oh, I certainly did. Yes, yes, we
All
did.
right,
So
we'll get to that. Hey, I
yeah.
have some fun information about Q. I always try to find something that's interesting and fun, and I found something that's really interesting. It's a big number, and Bentley through Q3. So all the 2025 so far, year to date, they sold about 2,200 vehicles. And I thought I'm going to do the math on this. How much money are they making? And if Ford makes about 15,000 on every F-150, I think it's reasonable to assume that Bentley's making 30 on every one of their vehicles. I would think it's more. So I did the math and I said, all
Yeah.
right, what's $30,000 per vehicle times 2,200 vehicles sold so far this year? And I got a profit of 66 million. And that's only, again, 3/4 of the year, right? We got more to come. So
Mhm.
it'd be up to probably, 80-ish, probably 90-ish actually. But what if they made 50,000 per vehicle, which is not a crazy number? I think it's in that ballpark. You multiply that, you get a profit so far of about $110 million. These are, even though the numbers are small, these are big profit makers for the manufacturers. And before you chime in, I looked at Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce only sold about 1,200 vehicles, but we know they're priced about 30-40% more than Bentley. And if you do the math, 1,200 times 100,000 profit per vehicle, which I think is absolutely right on the money, probably.
Yeah.
I think that may even be conservative. They make a lot of money on these vehicles because the out the door price of a Rolls Royce is around $400,000 to $500,000. So if
Wow.
you look at that, $100,000 profit per vehicle is reasonable. And if you do that, it comes out to $120 million so far in profit for BMW or for well, it is BMW because Rolls Royce is owned by
Yeah.
BMW. And by the way, that includes the United States. It does not include Dubai and Hong Kong and China
All the
and
foreign markets. Yeah.
India and all of Africa and South America and of course the Gulf states. So anyway, yeah, it's kind of fun, right?
hmm Yeah, and I just think of your Continental GTS that, as we know, Stefan wants to own someday, and that. But yeah, that's an amazing business model good for them.
The only numbers that are bigger, Jeff, are the number of Bentleys made per year times the amount of depreciation they have in five
Yeah,
years. Then you get a bigger number. So, all right,
yeah,
tell us about
or the number of Bentleys in Malibu, or the per capita, or the
it
yeah.
got burned up. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, listen, your family has had a couple experiences with safety. I know Stefan and I have talked about it briefly, but we weren't there. You were. Talk
Yeah.
about it and talk about what it's meant for you, your wife, and your daughters.
Yeah, so it's, I've learned a lot from Stefan on this car podcast. It's one thing to hear him talk about, safety and which cars to buy and what to look for, but then it's another thing to actually, be in a car wreck, not a car accident, as he's so taught us, yourself. And really, it was now essentially 2 months ago from today that I went through that somebody, driver, ran a red light and then clipped the right rear of our BMW X7 while we were taking it to the BMW dealership to get serviced. We almost made it. Oh, not quite. And so at the time, I didn't think it was a huge accident, but then I went and looked at this guy's car, and the entire front end of his Chevy Cruze was absolutely demolished, and like the whole crumple zones worked as extended as expected, and there was what looked like kind of a small dent in the X7, and $14,000 later. The X7 was completely repaired. But I went for a spin. My at the time, my Google Pixel had gone off and said, "Hey, were you in a car accident? Do we need to call 911?" And that was something I was like, "Wow, this actually, technology worked as intended. This is pretty cool." And then looking at this, the response at the time of the accident, I was very grateful to the police. Actually, there were multiple people who witnessed the accident who stayed to provide a testimony to the police. The other driver was okay. Thankfully, none of us were injured, and most importantly, none of us needed the services and expertise of our local trauma surgeon. And although I am, very grateful to Stefan and all of his training, I'm very happy to not have needed that. But it's just the kind of the emotional trauma of experiencing this wreck and having to, tell staff, family, friends about everything that you've been through. And hey, why is your wife driving a different rental car every couple weeks, because your car continues to be in the shop. But it's definitely something I was, very grateful. I was driving a large, new, well-built SUV at the time, and that none of us sustained injuries. But it's something that, now that I'm looking, shopping for our next car, that hey, what am I, those all those safety features really mean a lot, and have practical implications. And also, I thought, hey, what if I was driving my Miata at the time of being sideswiped? And I think things would have been a lot different. And it's kind of made us as a family think, all right, well, maybe that Miata isn't going to be as long of a term car as we had originally intended. Especially last night, I was on the way home, and there was a Toyota Tacoma who just came right into my lane, and I had to stop and brake and let him in, and I'm just like, oh gosh, this is so frustrating. And then thinking about how, over these last couple months, just observing people drive, just how unfortunately inattentive that most drivers are. They're, you know, behind you, and they're in traffic, and they're looking down at their phone, and who knows what they're doing. In addition, just how the aggressivity of drivers. And hey, we all want to get somewhere. We're all frustrated by traffic, but give each other some grace on the road. Don't follow so closely. It's just something that, I've really, like, before I say go across an intersection, once it turns green, I'm looking to see, hey, is there anyone turning or running a red light? And I'll always, I think, continue to do that as a result of this wreck.
Yeah, it's just amazing how these can happen. And you really do count your blessings if you have a vehicle that's safe, and you look at your family and they're okay, and you hug everybody, and you say a prayer of thanks. Let's
Yeah,
not forget, Jeff, speaking of your Miata, you had just gotten your Miata when you hit a deer.
it's true. It's true. Yeah, and I only owned it about 4 months, and clipped a deer on the way into work. And again, grateful that I had got the Brembo brake package in the Miata and had much less damage, I think, as a result of being able to slam on the brakes. But yeah, I've been in, unfortunately, been in multiple. I mean, now kind of car wrecks, and these two that we had that my wife and I were in were the first ones we've each been in that the cops were called, their tow trucks had to be towed away. But just also grateful to all the to BMW and to car manufacturers for building safe cars that keep our loved ones safe, and knowing that, hey, you know God forbid you need the skills and expertise of a trauma surgeon, they're there. But it's nice that we have the cars that we do, and that I wasn't that we weren't in an accident or in a wreck and in a car that was 30 years old.
Yeah, amen. And shout out to Dr. Stefan Moran, who, by the way, his lessons to me over decades always informs any vehicle I buy. I always think of the little things he's told me, and I take into account safety. I take it seriously, and obviously you do too.
Yeah, yeah. Now I think of Natalie's wreck that she was in, where she got rear-ended and the whiplash, and I look at, okay, is my seat properly positioned? How far away is my head from the headrest? Can I see all my mirrors? Can I reach the steering wheel appropriately? And then always just checking your blind spots so that you're decreasing that risk of getting in a wreck altogether. So,
Amen. Yeah, that's so cool. So, all right, on to car spotting, and my car spotting is underwhelming. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm a little bit disgusted. I'm disappointed. And here's why. I saw a brand new 2026. I couldn't get a picture because it was too quick, but it doesn't matter. I saw a 2026 Audi Q5. Audi Q5 has been their bestseller for at least 15 years. And it's a good vehicle. I've driven many of them. I like them. But I'm ready after the last two. They came out with the first one about 15 years ago. And then they came out with the second one, the second generation. You couldn't tell that it was the second gen unless you knew. You and I can
yeah.
tell. But
Yes, but we're not normal. Yeah.
yeah, but they improved the interior. They did clean up the design. They made it look more modern, but it was honestly much more like a facelift than it was a real redesign. And I think that's because it was a facelift, not a real redesign. And it just was unimpressive. But I said, okay, they went 15 years. And by the way, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They're selling a lot of them. That's fine. But you can only do that so much, and then you go from being comfortable and confident to being complacent. And there's a
Sure.
fine line,
Sure.
and I think they passed that line like 4 years ago. So now the new one's out. It is on a new platform. It is all new, but it doesn't look like it. You would be hard pressed if you were, it's a little bit bigger. It's like the old Q5 morphed with the Q8 e-tron, that kind of design, or
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Q6 e-tron. And it just looks ordinary. And here's what it looks like to me, Jeff. It looks like they said, our future is in electric vehicles. We're going to put all our money and our best designers, our best engineers into that area. And we're just going to kind of, mail it in on the Q5. Hello, your best seller. And here's an analogy because, again, it looks like Cadillac is going to pass or come close to passing Audi this year. Cadillac has gone all in on EVs. They have the Celestiq, the Lyric, all these other ones. I can't remember. The Vistic is another one.
Oh yeah.
They are
Yeah.
going all in on, guess what they did? They, on their brand new Escalade, which just came out, a really cool new design. They really put effort into it. The new interior, they put a lot of money into the Escalade, which is a V8 truck.
Mhm.
And meanwhile, Audi did the opposite. And, instead of, and again, Cadillac, I've criticized for going too much into electric, but I give them credit for with the Escalade, which is their bestseller, not neglecting it, not getting complacent. Audi got complacent.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, one of our other business partners, his wife had a new Q5 with their Q7 was on loan. And I saw it and I was like, oh, it's white. Oh no, that actually is the Q5, or the new Q5. And she owns a Q7 currently. That's I think a 2017, and she was underwhelmed by the Q5. And I mean, my mom has a Q5 that's a few years old, but my parents are not planning to get a new one when it comes out. And granted, I think the big change with the all the new Audis is the giant screens, just like with everybody. But it's not enough. They need to if really as you said, tried on the styling and then made the interior world class like we know Audi can do.
Yeah, Audi were disappointed. All right, let's
Yeah,
move on to PCA. And
sure,
our chapter had a really cool event. It's called Oktoberfest, and they go to a high end kind of indoor outdoor mall, kind of a retail space is the best way to say it. And it's very beautiful. It's very upscale, and there's a lot of parking, which was reserved for Porsche, and it's really something else. And I was not able to make it, but Jeff, you were there, and it was great, right?
it was phenomenal. I was blown away at the some of the money that's in Boise and these cars that people have just tucked away. Who knows where? So there were yeah, it was this last Sunday. There were 150 cars that were
But let
registered.
me interrupt you
Yeah,
just for a sec because you're absolutely
yeah,
right. Boise is
yeah.
growing. There's a lot of money here. There's a lot of business success. But, and I made this point before, but it bears repeating. When people, and it's usually men, have a successful business, let's say a contractor, let's say a guy who owns 10 Wendy's or something, and
Mhm.
think a builder, developer, that kind of thing. They do not want to be seen driving. They don't want their employees, they don't want their customers to see them driving a Porsche. So what they'll
Sure,
do is they'll drive an F-150 around, and you'll only see them in an F-150. But they have these nice Porsches. You just don't see them on the road.
sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So there were 150 cars that were there. I had registered our 2017 Macan GTS, and then I got multiple emails before the event that, hey, we've actually sold out all 150 of these spots for the car show, and they had never done that in prior years. So I think the success and the notoriety of this event is continuing to build over these years. And so for me, my favorite was a viola purple 964, really non-turbo, just Carrera that this guy had actually imported from Japan. He had told me there were only two of these 964s that were sold in really in the US, and then this was his really number three that he had imported over, and at presumably large expense. I had a just normal conversation with the guy about the car and everything he'd done to it, and he happens to have a 6-year-old daughter who adores the car just because it's purple, which was a bonding for the two of us. I went and looked him up later on Instagram. He happens to be the former head of digital Starbucks and worked for MGM among other just a successful businessman. And I was absolutely blown away by this car, mainly because of the color and the rarity. But
Did you
the
say the year? I don't remember if you said the year.
uh, I know it was a 964. I want to say just
That's
maybe
early
90.
90s, early
Yeah,
90s,
yeah, 92,
92.
93.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he had gold BBS wheels. Like the entire interior was viola purple, which is overwhelming
Wow.
on a daily driver kind of basis, but on a car show kind of basis is just amazing to see. But he was, happy to talk to whoever wanted to come up to him and tell you the story of the car, which I just always find fun with these events. Just kind of go to regular guy like who just owns a Macan and tell
Purple,
you
purple
the
on purple, purple
yeah.
on purple 964. Boy, that's a lot more Dubai than it is Boise.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. He also, I think I had sent you his Instagram profile, but he's also got multiple other Porsches, including a baby blue um, Taycan Cross Turismo that's on that extrovert
I've
style.
seen that car.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've seen it in
It's
downtown.
something else.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
mice and blue Sport
yeah,
Turismo.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. The best of show car was a 356A Outlaw with the leather straps for the hood. That my girls were like, "Wait, why does it have these straps?" And I was like, "No, that's really what keeps it down." And it is, I mean, harkens back to its racing heritage, and that was really cool to see. But I think the
Very
other,
Carrera Panamericana, the old
yeah,
Mexican
That's
race.
true. Yeah. Yeah. And then our local favorite Idaho potato farmer was there with a couple blow you away.
I thought he was a dairy
Uh,
farmer.
oh, maybe dairy farm. Yeah, couple. I had heard
I
potato
don't know for
farmer,
sure.
but
That's what I heard.
yeah, but he was there with a couple blow you away, never before seen, probably never to be seen again. Turbos, because they had featured the turbo with this being with the 50th anniversary of it. But yeah, this so he the one that I had never seen and that I sent you about was the 964 turbo flat nose, and on the in this generation of 964 turbo, there were three variants. The one that was produced for the US was called the X85, and Porsche only produced about 39 examples
Wow.
of the X85. And this car was felt to be due like about one of 30, and people were estimating the value at about 1.5 million for the
Oh my
car. And
gosh.
yeah,
Hey, that was the 3.6, right?
yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you were talking about economy and the global economy in right around 1990, which is when they were developing, it came out in 1990, but they were really struggling. Porsche had spent a lot of money in the 959 and they spent too much money on it. And then the Deutschmark became very valuable. So it became prohibitively expensive in the United States. So they really had trouble selling. So they were really struggling financially. So they were going to come out with the 964 turbo and it was going to be a 3.6 liter. But they couldn't get it over the finish line. So what they did was they just introduced it with the 3.3, which is what they had in the previous 930. And they just said, well, we can't do it. We can't give you a new engine. So by the time they were ready with the 3.6 liter turbo, the 964 was almost over. So they made very few of them. And oh, by the way, there was now a global recession. This is like 92-ish,
Sure. Sure.
93-ish. And there was a global recession. So there's very few 3.6s. That's why they're so valuable. I mean, any 3.6 is really valuable. But so that's the backstory on that. But oh, by the way, it had more power.
Yeah. Yeah, these people. I mean, everybody at all the PCA members who knew their Porsches were just absolutely fawning over this 964 turbo. And I took our girls and my wife to go see it. They're kind of like, it looks like an
It's the beef.
or it's like it's got a smashed nose. Like what's so special about that? But yeah, it was a really fun event. It's fun just to go walk around, see all these different, the kind of the rainbow colors. Actually, the Macans
Yeah,
probably had the
tell us
most.
about some of the colors you saw.
Yeah, so actually the Macans had some of the most colors out of all the cars. There was a malachite green Macan. There was a Miami blue, which my youngest daughter, that was her favorite car of the whole event. I was like, okay, yeah, you have good taste. Miami blue, love it. And then it was copper, ruby, metallic Macan as well. And then you had your usual chalks, sapphire blue. There was an Albert blue mid 60s 911, as well as an Albert blue 96 or the GT4 RS, the Ruby Star Neo GT4 RS. But yeah, it's just fun to go and see, like, hey, what's the size of a 991, what's the size of a 997, and be able to show my wife, hey, here's what I'm thinking about, like the 997. What do you think about the size between the two of these? Like, you can talk about them and research them to the cows come home, but then actually showing your significant other, like, hey, here's what this actually could mean for us. So that was really valuable for me as I'm thinking about a 997 and hopefully the near-ish future, next couple years. But yeah.
Yeah, you can pitch it as significantly safer than a Miata, which it is.
Exactly. I know. Honestly, I mean, size wise, it really is. And because I was going back to that, and the safety is just this, like the discrepancy between the Miata and anything else on the road, including a deer, is huge. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, you got to think about that. And, a 997, boy, I've talked about the one I bought and then sold to my son, and it was so much fun. And owning a 992, which I love, the 997 was a revelation. It's much more analog and it's much smaller. It's zippier, it's agile, so
yeah,
much fun to drive. And yet it has all the safety systems. that Dr. Moran would recommend. It's really,
Sure.
really, it's like a good sweet spot car.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And there were actually like there were a lot fewer 997s than there were 991s there, which I was kind of surprised about. But it's just fun to be able to go cross shop comparison in real life rather than do it online and read forums and debate among friends. And so, yeah, that to me was one of the more valuable parts of being at the show. But it's fun to go meet, people of similar interests who share that crazy Porsche bug that we have.
I went to Air Water, which is, Luftgekühlt is this really ultra cool, air cooled only 911 show. Actually, 356 too, but it's so cool. Well, anyway, Air Water is not quite as cool. It's not quite as exclusive, but it's awesome. And it's, basically all Porsche sports cars. Anyway, I went, and this would have been April of this year, and that dairy farmer was there. He was at
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
auction. He was talking to a couple of friends, so I went over and said hi, and he told me his name, which of course I promptly forgot. I can tell you this: in Triple Zero magazine, which is the Porsche magazine, they had a an article on him, and it showed his barn, and he has every significant RS uh,
Hmm.
sports car that there is, anyone you can think of, and that's amazing. He had the RS Mule for the G body. So the Carrera 2.7 RS is just so famous, and it was 1973. Well, 1974 they had a new body, and they tried to do the same thing, which they kind of did, not quite, but kind of. And they had a Mule that was owned by an engineer, and he has that.
Yeah.
So like these cars are beyond cool, and it's one of the best collections in the world. And this guy, you would never pick him up out of a
No,
lineup. You'd never pick him out as
no,
a Porsche guy.
no. He had so it's Bob Shillington is his name, and yeah, he was he went up to get his award for his car, and he's in just you know some dirty blue jeans, has his iPhone in a holster hanging off his
I like
jeans with a
old
yeah.
Skechers,
Yeah, and I think kind
and
of
he's what, 80
military
years old, right? He's
haircut.
like 80 years old.
Yeah, yeah, and he did have a 911 Turbo sweatshirt on, but no, nothing fancy, nothing eye catching, and he walking around looking at his cars. I don't ever remember him being by the cars. It was kind of like a kind of a mysterious effect that he had, but he was just chatting up with people at the end, and just a normal guy.
When I met him, he could not have been nicer, and
Yeah,
just very gracious to say hi. I said, "Yeah, I'm from Idaho, and I recognize you from the PCA," and just the nicest guy. And one day, Jeff, I'm going to pull out my automotive journalist card and send him an email and get a tour. And
that would be amazing.
I
Yeah,
will, I'll go with you because
cool.
you would certainly appreciate it.
Yeah,
Just a
my
wonderful,
jaw will
yeah.
be going like that the whole time. Yeah, yeah. And speaking of PCA, I think the other plug I have is the for the junior PCA membership. Our girls got free memberships on with mine, and they proudly displayed their pink Porsche pig on the dash of the Macan during the car show.
I love that.
Yeah,
Your girls are like the biggest car guys I know.
it's true. It's true.
More
Yeah,
than
yeah,
more than my sons.
yeah. Like the our youngest one. Yeah, she loves Miami blue, and I was like, all right, yeah, I don't can't do better than that. So.
No. There was one, and we got to wrap this up, but there was one car of all the pictures you sent, and thank you for those pictures, that it just stopped me in my tracks. And it stopped me in my tracks partly because I've kind of driven this, but it was a Riviera Blue 993. And before you, I have, I know Porsche colors pretty well, just like you. I really can't tell the difference between Riviera Blue and Mexico Blue. And the car that you sent a picture of is Riviera Blue, and it's absolutely beautiful for that car. The last 993 ever made was sold to Jerry Seinfeld, and he knew he was going to get it. So he said he agonized over all the decisions about how to spec it, and the color he chose was Mexico Blue. I think either Riviera or Mexico Blue or Arena Red for that car, which is considered the best 911. That's how you do it.
Mhm. Yeah, and in this Riviera Blue, the guy tracks it. I've been to some autocrosses with him, and yeah, it's just I love it every single time I see it.
Yeah, and we're living in an era where everything still is, despite our protestations, white, gray, black, silver. It's so boring. Seeing these cars, it's extra special in this era.
Mhm. Genuinely, yeah, yeah. I was just grateful for everybody bringing them out, showing them, and letting girls like mine just walk up and go look inside that viola purple 964, and yeah, it's a special crew.
That's how it's how car enthusiasts are born.
It's true, very true.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jeff, thank you for filling in for Stefan and Adams. Adams and Stefan will be back soon. Stefan is in the Greek Isles, so
Good for him.
yeah, he's doing this cruise. It looks like he's having an amazing time. And I don't know. Wow, my gosh, he has the wood surgeon business, so he does amazing woodwork, very fine craftsmanship. I just bought an end table from him, and I
Ooh,
could not believe. My wife saw it and said we have to have that. I couldn't believe how beautiful it is, how well made it is, how solid it is. It's incredible. And then he is in the National Guard, and then he travels, and he just I don't know how he gets the time.
yeah,
Anyway,
retired, I guess. Yeah, yeah, good. Or mostly retired. Yeah,
I think he's actually retired from the National Guard too. He still does some work for them, but and of
yeah,
course Adams, such a great guy. You were generous to forward the Porsche photos to Adams, who was very excited. Talk about a Porsche knowledge guy.
genuinely. Yeah, yeah. Happy to. I always enjoy our group texts and conversations that light up my day. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna wrap it up, and I'm gonna play Stefan here by saying like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, send us a message, whatever you want to do. We appreciate any feedback, and we have gotten feedback, which so far has been positive. So I like that. And Jeff, thank you so much for filling in. I really appreciate it.
Happy to. Thanks for having me on again, Steve. Always fun.